Hey, it's Zach. Welcome to my backyard. Today is Brew Day. We are going to introduce you to the best hobby that you didn't know existed, brewing beer at home.
Hey, I'm Ben. I'm the owner of Spike. Today we're going to do a step-by-step walkthrough on how to brew beer at home using Zach's 20-gallon solo system.
A solo brew day has 7 steps, and we'll walk you through each one today. You'll be a brewmaster in no time. A detailed user guide, which is on our website and emailed out with every solo purchase, walks through the simple assembly process, which takes all of 30 minutes, including a beer break. Today, we're brewing a hazy IPA. It's going to be a 10-gallon batch, which is the perfect size for 2 homebrew kegs. Zach found this recipe from the Home Brewers Association website and had his local home brew store package all the ingredients needed. There are literally thousands of pre-packaged kits you can buy online or from your local homebrew store. Once you decide on which style of beer you want to brew and purchase all the ingredients for the recipe, the rest is pretty straightforward. At its core, beer is 4 simple ingredients: water, grain, otherwise known as malt, hops, and yeast. Brewing is essentially heating up water to soak grains in. That hot soak converts starches in the grain into a sugary water solution. Once we have that sugar water, known as wort, we add our yeast. The yeast eats the sugar and creates the alcohol. The water, grains, hops, and yeast are what create all the different flavor combinations, ranging from a Hefeweizen to a stout. First things first, we need to heat up our water. Add the appropriate amount of water your recipe calls for. We've added some etched volume markers on the inside of the kettle. This should help you fill the kettle to the correct amount. Now that we have the appropriate amount of water in the kettle, we can put the grain basket in. This special basket is like the tea bag of the solo system. It allows us to easily strain the grain from the water, which we'll do about halfway into the brew day. After the basket is in the kettle, we need to connect our hoses and start the heating process. First, connect a hose from the drain port of the kettle to the pump's inlet. The next hose will be connected from the pump's outlet to the inlet port on the basket. Once your hoses are all connected, in contrast to the less precise and more dangerous propane systems on the market, the Spike Solo system is 100% electrically heated and controlled. Additionally, electric brewing is by far cheaper to operate at less than $2 per brew day, as opposed to a propane tank that can cost over $20. We offer the Solo in 2 electrical options: 120 volt, standard 3-prong household plug, and 240 volt, what your clothes dryer would use. The 240 volt will heat quicker and allow for larger batch sizes to be made, like the 10-gallon batch we're brewing today. Zach is using the 240 volt option, which he has wired both outside and in his basement for indoor brewing during the winter. Now, back to brewing. We're going to set our controller to the mash temperature called out by the recipe, which, for us, is 155 degrees. But first, a pro tip. The temperature of the grain is cooler than your water temperature. When you add grain to the water, the temperature will drop due to the cooler grain. Taking this into account, set your controller about 5 degrees higher than the desired mash temperature. That way, when you add your grain to the hot water, your temperature will be right where you need it. Our recipe calls for a 155-degree mash, so we're going to set our controller to 160 degrees to account for the grain cooling effect. To heat the water, open the kettle drain valve and the pump outlet valve. Turn the pump and heating element on and let the controller bring your kettle up to temperature. Place the lid on the kettle to help speed up the heating process. During this process, the water is being recirculated by the pump. This ensures the temperature is consistent throughout the kettle and basket. Next, we're going to mash in, which, in brewer speak, means adding our grain to the hot water. Adding crushed grain to the water creates a mash. This is where the hot water converts the starches in the grain to sugar. First, we need to turn the pump and element off. We can also remove the lid. Don't have a spot to put your lid? Don't worry, the lid can be hung on the back of the kettle handle. Yeah, our engine nerds have truly thought of everything. Now, we're ready to add the grain. Pour the grain slowly into the basket. Have a brew buddy stir while you pour. Or, if you're brewing solo, pour a little grain in at a time and stir in between pours. Stirring is key. It makes sure all the grains come in contact with the water and that no dough balls, clumps of dry grain, form. Once the grain is in, we can start our mash timer. Most recipes call for a 60-minute mash. We recommend keeping your pump and heating element off for the first 5 to 10 minutes to hydrate the grain. Once fully hydrated, the grain is larger and less likely to pass through the bottom filter. Lower the temperature on your control panel back to the temp called out by your recipe. Again, our recipe calls for 155 degrees. Once the temperature is set, we'll turn on the pump and then turn on the heating element. Open the ball valve on the pump outlet slowly until the valve is about a quarter open. Make sure to always use the valve at the exit of the pump to restrict the flow. It's the most accurate way to control the recirculation speed. Never restrict the flow to the pump by closing the kettle drain valve, as it can starve the pump of liquid and cause your pump to wear prematurely. Constant recirculation of liquid through the grain is a highly recommended step. This will help you maintain constant temperatures and make your system much more efficient. So, we have our recirculation in process. Great! One thing you'll want to keep an eye on is the volume in the basket. It should stay at the same volume during this entire mash. But if you see the volume start to rise, it most likely means that there is a clog in the filter at the bottom, otherwise known as a stuck mash. If this happens, simply turn off the pump, stir the mash a bit, and then turn the pump on again. You should be good to go. Now that we have created our wort, brewer speak for sugary water, we need to separate it from the grain. Turn off the heating element and pump. In order to separate the wort from the spent grain, you're going to need to lift the basket out of the kettle and hang the basket from the top of the kettle using the hooks on the back of the basket. We always recommend having 2 people lift the basket. 1, it's safer, and 2, brew day is best with friends and family. Get your helpers involved in something other than just tasting the previously made beer. The spent grain doesn't have to go to waste. You can use it for everything from baking to dog treats to compost. Before we move on, let's take a minute to chat about a quick pro tip. Now that your basket is out of the kettle and hanging on the basket hooks, you can turn the pump back on to about a quarter flow. This is called a Vorlauf, and it helps with wort clarity. The grain actually acts as a filter during this process. As we recirculate the wort back through the grain, it traps any solids in the grain bed. Vorlaufing for 10 minutes will be plenty. After we've Vorlaufed for 10 minutes, we can turn off the pump and let the basket continue to drain. You're going to want to let it hang for about 10 to 15 minutes, or until it stops dripping. Boiling. This is where the wort is going to evaporate off flavors and concentrate itself. Close all the valves. Disconnect the hose from the basket and connect it to the Whirlpool port on the kettle. Turn the control panel from Auto to Manual mode. Auto mode is used during the mash step to achieve precise temperature control. Manual mode adjusts the percentage output of the element so a perfect rolling boil can be achieved. The user guide outlines the simple steps to switch between auto mode and manual mode. We've also created a quick video that walks through the steps as well. The Solo was designed to be easy to use and make for a quick brew day. Being able to start your boil step as soon as the basket is lifted and starts to drip cuts serious time off the process, which equals more time for drinking. Set your controller to 100% power and turn on your element. Once the basket is done draining, after about 10 or 15 minutes, it can be removed from the lip of the kettle and set aside for cleaning later. Pro tip: when the wort is close to reaching boiling, an issue called hot break can occur. The wort will start to rise and boil over the top of the kettle, very similar to boiling pasta. If this happens, there's a simple fix. Turn the element off and stir the wort for a few seconds. You may need to repeat this a couple of times. It should subside within 5 minutes. Once your wort is boiling, the controller can be dialed back so you get a steady rolling boil. Typically 40 to 60% should do the trick. However, on the 120-volt version, it may be much higher. Set your boil timer to what is called out by your recipe. Most recipes call for a 60-minute boil. Since our recipe calls for hops at the 60-minute mark, we'll add our first addition now and check on the food. We're brewing outside today, so the steam produced during boiling is not an issue. However, when brewing inside, the steam can become an issue. Lucky for you, we've solved that problem as well. During the boiling step, a gallon or more of liquid can be boiled off into steam. That steam can condense on and in your walls, which can cause mold. Enter the Spike Steam Condensing Lid. This lid was specially designed to sit on your kettle while boiling, capture the steam that is produced, and convert that back into a liquid. That liquid, which would have been condensation on your walls, is now captured in a bucket, which can be discarded after brew day. If you're an indoor brewer, the steam condensing lid is a must-have. Our hops are added, our 60-minute boil is completed, and it's time for our next step, Whirlpool. To Whirlpool, we'll run the wort into the pump and then back into the kettle at a 90-degree angle. The angle will cause the wort to spin inside of the kettle, thus why the step is called whirlpooling. If you want clear wort, this step is key. Spinning causes stuff like grain, hops, and proteins to collect at the bottom center of the kettle. Our side drain tube, paired with our special stepped bottom kettle, avoids sucking up any of this material. That means clear wort into your fermenter, which makes for clear beer in your glass. To begin whirlpooling, the first thing you need to do is to turn the heating element off. You'll need to move over to the valves and open 3 of them: the outlet valve on the kettle, the valve on the pump, and the upper valve on the kettle. Turn the pump on and run with the valve fully opened. We recommend whirlpooling for 10 to 15 minutes. After your whirlpool is complete, turn the pump off and close all the valves. Let the wort sit for 5 to 10 minutes so the material can fall out of suspension. Now we chill. Not grab a beer and chill, but chill what's going to be beer. Reduce the temperature of the wort to yeast pitching temps. Brewer speak for adding yeast to your chilled wort. The proper chill temperature range will be called out by the yeast manufacturer and listed on the packaging. Are you using our counterflow chiller? Great! Not sure what a counterflow chiller is? Well, it's a specially designed device which allows hot wort to flow in one direction while cool water flows in the opposite direction. The cool water absorbs the heat from the wort and quickly cools it to the proper yeast pitching temps. Disconnect the hose from the second port on the kettle to the wort inlet on the chiller. Next, we'll attach another hose to the outlet. We'll be using this discharge water for Zach's garden. Then, we'll connect a cold water source to the chiller. Today, we'll be using Zach's garden hose. Now, we'll make the final hose connection, which is from the outlet of the chiller to the fermenter. Attach the temperature probe from the kettle to the temperature probe on the chiller. This allows us to read the temperature of the chilled wort exiting the chiller. The last step is moving our wort through the chiller and into our fermenter. Our fermenter is where the yeast is added. Over the next week, the yeast will eat the sugars, create alcohol, and convert our wort into beer. And who said chemistry wasn't awesome? There are many fermenter options on the market, ranging from cheap with few features to more expensive with all the bells and whistles. Sanitation is crucial during fermentation, which is why Spike only sells stainless steel fermenters. Zach made the classic mistake of buying multiple cheap fermenters before settling on the Spike Flex. Heed the saying, buy once, cry once. We said it once, but we'll say it again. Sanitation is crucial. Always be sure to fully sanitize your fermenter before transferring your chilled wort. StarSan is a very popular no-rinse option that can be ordered online or picked up at your local homebrew store. Open the outlet valve on the kettle as well as the valve on the pump. The pump valve should just be cracked open. We want the flow rate to be very slow. Once you do this, you can now turn the pump on. The temperature exiting your chiller should match your yeast pitch temps. If the temperature is too high, you can close the pump outlet valve even more. Chilling typically takes 20 to 30 minutes. When the kettle is fully drained into your fermenter, you can close all of your valves and turn off the pump. Look at that whirlpool cone in the kettle. That's all the gunk that was collected during the whirlpool that you don't want in your beer. We'll now pitch our yeast, seal up our fermenter, and let the yeast do its thing for the next week. The recommended fermentation temperature for this yeast strain is 70 degrees, so Zach will store his fermenter in his cool basement. First, we'll want to dump the material that was collected in the hop cone. Rinse out the kettle to remove any of those pesky large particles. A sponge or brush can be helpful here. After you rinse out the kettle, Fill it up about 1/4 full with hot water, or cool water, which you can heat up, and then add your preferred brewery wash. Similar to the sanitizer, Starsan, brewery wash, brewer speak for cleaner, can be purchased online or at your local homebrew store. Connect a hose from the drain valve on the kettle to the pump. From the pump, you'll connect a hose to the Whirlpool port on your kettle. Once the hoses are attached and the valves are open, you can turn the pump on. Run the pump for about 5 minutes. During this time, you can scrub the inside of the kettle. By pumping the hot brewery wash through the hoses, valves, and pumps, you're cleaning the inside components. Quick pro tip: if you open and close the valves a few times, it will help clean their insides more thoroughly. Now that we have the kettle and hardware cleaned, we can attach the hose connected to the Whirlpool port on the kettle to the chiller inlet. This will do 2 things. 1, it will drain the kettle, and 2, it will clean the chiller. Repeat these steps again with clean water to thoroughly rinse the cleaner. Your kettle, pump, hoses, and chiller are now clean. To clean the basket, dump all the spent grain out. Rinse the basket to get rid of any stuck-on grain. With the basket rinsed, we can scrub it clean using brewery wash. Rinse with clean water, and you're all good to go. Your brew day is now officially complete. So go have a beer, or 2. The final thing to talk about, which is pretty important, is what to do once your beer is done fermenting in about a week. The 2 most popular options are to bottle or keg your beer. Most people start off by bottling because it's a low-cost approach. Bottles, caps, and a capping device can all be purchased online or at your local homebrew shop. Your homebrew shop will be a great resource to show you exactly what to do and most likely offer brewing classes. The other option is kegging. Kegging your beer goes quicker, but costs more. A kegerator, kegs, CO2, and additional equipment are needed. This is usually one of the first upgrades a new brewer makes. Brewing is hands-on, and building a kegerator can be a fun project.
Zach, to kick this off, tell us, why did you get into brewing?
Barbecue is kind of my gateway drug into brewing. I went over to a brew day at a friend's house, and it was a lot like a barbecue day, right? We had sports on, we had all the smells, you had all the excitement of what you were cooking. I went back home, I thought this would be a perfect addition. I've got food on a smoker for, up to 15 hours sometimes. I'm not the guy that likes to sit around and get a tan. I'd much rather be tinkering with something while we've got food on the grill. Also, my other primary hobby is golf. If anybody knows golf, it takes up a lot of time on a Saturday and Sunday throughout the day. If I picked up another hobby like that, frankly, my wife would kill me. So brewing beer and adding it to something that we can all enjoy at home, the summer barbecue, it was perfect.
Going from a non-brewer to a brewer, you picked up the solo. How many brews until you felt like you were proficient, where you were making good drinkable beer?
It's kind of funny that I went into this thinking it was going to be a big learning curve and it was going to be quite a while before I had beer that anybody cared to try, but as luck may have it or whatever went into it, the first beer that my solo spit out it was damn good beer. The fun part about home brewing is when I give what I've made to somebody who had no idea what home brewing was before, they're expecting this to be some swill that they're maybe willing to put down. And first thing they say to me is, this is pretty good. This tastes like something I could have in a bar. And that's really what's fun about it for me.
So you talked about you were over at a buddy's and he was on a more complex system, and the learning curve was something that you were frankly concerned about. What about the solo was what you were looking for in comparison to everything else that's out there?
So I think the number one thing is really just ease of use. The learning curve is next to nothing. Like I said, the first beer that I brewed, it was something that I was really proud to share with friends, and everyone after that has been the same. So the second thing is size and mobility. When the weather's nice in Wisconsin, I bring it outside, we brew outside. When it's a Wisconsin winter and the weather stinks, we take it downstairs and we brew in the basement. And the system is turnkey. I literally went on Spike's website, clicked a button, showed up a few days later, and by the weekend, I'm brewing beer. It's also a quality product. And I think that when I'm comparing my purchase for a pellet smoker, I probably did 2 months of research on that. And ultimately, one of the selling points to me was this thing's gonna hold up. If I'm spending hard-earned money on this, I want it to be quality, and I want it to be something that I can put out a high-end product with. That was the Solo for me.
Tell us, what does Brew Day mean to you?
Honestly, Brew Day is about way more than just the beer. My daughter, she's 4 years old. She's never had a beer, but she's smart enough to know that Brew Day is about everybody coming over, hanging out, spending time together, and collectively making something together. You know, it's like this whole ritual of lead up for Brew Day. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, we're getting everything ready. My friends are coming over, food is cooking. We got sports on, we got bags, the weather's nice. And then when it's all said and done, we're sitting around enjoying food that came off the grill today with a beer that I brewed 2 weeks ago. It's a perfect day.
If you want to learn more about the Solo, check out our website or our YouTube channel. We got a ton of information on there. We also have a super knowledgeable customer support team that's more than willing to answer any questions you may have.